Hey guys, Tommy Carrigan with Tommy Untamed. We've got a great show coming up. Thank you for watching. With Dr. Anita Tibau. I'm sure I'm gonna already butcher that, even though you just told me how to pronounce it. The great Mr. E.M. Burlingame put us in touch, and we're going to talk about, like you just said, over a quarter century of research into Mercury. But because that's about the limit of what I know, I am going to save myself from looking like a complete idiot, and I'm going to hand it over to you and let you take this in any direction you'd like to. You can not, I don't know, introduce yourself.
Okie dokie. First of all, I'm not a doctor, although everybody thinks that I am. I am a researcher and writer, and I have an affiliation with the University of Puerto Rico due to my long-term work in the field of mercury and toxicology. I got involved in this a long time ago, as you said, like 25 years plus. I don't want to say how much more. Um, and I found out that my mercury fillings were, in fact, the root cause of my chronic adult asthma. And once I realized that, then I got on my soapbox and I said, okay, if I have mercury in my head, those silver fillings are deceptively called either silver or amalgam, but they're actually 48 to 54% mercury. And those mercury fillings can cause a whole lot of damage in a whole lot of different ways. And the big problem is that most people do not know that they are sitting with the most toxic non-radioactive material known to man inside of their head. So yeah, it's a big deal. It's a real big deal. And the deception is outrageous. They started using these fillings. And in fact, the American Dental Association was founded on the use of mercury in the 1800s. So the history is very, very old. It's almost about 175 years now that they've been used. Mercury passes generation to generation. And believe it or not, they are still putting tons of mercury in people's heads around the world. Yeah. In fact, in the United States, this is a real fun fact. Over 50% of the US population has mercury in their teeth today, and they're still putting it in. It is not banned. Okay. So we're talking about 180 million people plus, and that's based on the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, otherwise known as NHANES data, which is the most important population studies. They call it the gold standard in the world. So in 2016, they did count either mercury or composite fillings, and that's the numbers that we found. It's a big deal.
Give me literally 2 seconds. Let me turn off the air conditioner. Way too strong. As with most things, not all the time, but I'd say the vast majority of the time, you can kind of trace it back to like, yeah, it was the cheapest. And it's like, why did they do this? Why did they do that? Why did they use asbestos, or why did they, the old copper pipes? And it's like, was anyone intentionally trying to poison you? Probably not. It was more so, this is cheaper. This is cheap. It's, don't tell anyone what the side effects of, living near a burn pit is. And it's not, although I'm sure there are some psychopaths, a lot of the time it's just, yeah, they're cutting corners. They're using sawdust instead of oats or something. And if you're serving a million boxes of cereal a month, it's like, yeah, it's enough. That's a sizable amount of money you can cut. I get all that. I also get the nefariousness of things like, addictive things like the not Purdue family, yeah, Purdue family, Sackler family, Oxycontin, and then producing Suboxone, which if we now know they're producing it at the same time, it clearly shows that they knew it was addictive, and that's okay. Still evil, get it, but again, and it's not discounting it or excusing it, but I can kind of understand it where I go, yeah, that was just someone trying to make a lot of money. It doesn't excuse it, but you can kind of you can kind of
I'm going to go back to that point.
okay.
So
Why
originally,
Mercury?
yeah, about mercury and
So is
dentistry.
it cheap? Is it what?
Well, here's the deal. They had dental surgeons, which were also they were an MD first, and then they specialized in
Yeah.
dentistry. and they were called the dental surgeons, and they signed an oath of ethics not to use mercury because they knew back then in like 1850 this is not good.
You go
Mercury is a
insane.
neurotoxin. And the American Dental Association was formed with the people that they called dental craftsmen, which were barbers or they shoot horses or build houses. And those are the guys that said, okay, yeah, it's too cheap and easy to use. And if you have a chair, you can, instead of pouring hot gold in someone's tooth, or you could just put mercury in it and you'll be done.
Is
So it was based on fraud in the beginning. And they're still using it today. And in 1976, it was grandfathered in under generally recognized as safe GRAS. So it has never been tested for safety and efficacy because obviously you cannot make a poison not a poison. It's not going to happen. And mercury happens to be the only element that's a solid, liquid, or a gas. And the problem with these fillings are they constantly are off gassing. If you drink hot liquid, if you brush your teeth, even just doing nothing but talking, they're off gassing. So it's such a huge problem. Um, and millions upon millions of people have it in their heads today. They're putting it in babies and they're putting it in our military. And I'm telling you, it's such an outrage to me because we also have a global treaty. It's called the Minamata Convention on Mercury Treaty, which I have participated in since 2002. Okay. So in the treaty, the only two products that actually had mercury that goes into the human body were vaccines and dental mercury. Vaccines did not get into the treaty. Okay. You want to talk about the WHO and corruption? I had a front row seat. So I know, and it's bad. It's really, really bad. So I'm glad we pulled out of that because the WHO is probably one of the most corrupt global entities on the planet. So back to dental mercury. And the treaty, we only got a phase down approach. Now, mind you, blood pressure cuffs, thermometers, other things that have to do with medicine that were being used externally, they have all been banned. Dental mercury is the only thing that got into the treaty that goes in the human body that's on a phase down approach with no end in sight. So, yeah, it's really bad. It's really, really bad. And so I appreciate you giving me the
yeah.
platform to talk about this to your followers because people don't know why they're sick. And because mercury is so insidious, it could be anything. It attacks all the target organs. One of our colleagues, Dr. Boyd Haley, he made the relationship between mercury and Alzheimer's disease. And the mercury, obviously, the exposure for most people is from the teeth. So yeah, it's a big deal. It's a real big deal.
Forgive my ignorance. Is so I mean, I even look at something like depleted uranium, and it's like, all right, well, why is that used? Well, it's super dense, so you put it on huge rounds that you use to punch through armored targets. Primarily, I think we made a ton of them during the Cold War, so we could turn Soviet tanks to Swiss cheese. That's a DU round is for when you just gotta punch. It's not necessarily that you're intentionally trying to hit them with radioactivity is not going to kill a tank crew as quickly as you want. You want the bullet to kill. You don't want to shoot someone then they die 4 years later. It's the military, they want them. So like something like that, I go okay, and it's depleted, which means they've already used it for nuclear enrichment and they've got the energy of the bombs. Okay, is mercury cheap? Maybe I'm just like a simpleton,
No, no,
and
no.
I always thought because it's shiny and looks alien that it must be expensive.
Um, Back in the day, they said it was that was the use. It was cheap and easy to use.
Okay.
Uh, but no longer is that the case because nowadays, dental offices, the EPA had a ruling that you have to have a mercury amalgam separator in your dental office, which means it captures the mercury before it goes into the wastewater. Because believe it or
Yeah.
not, mercury dental amalgam is the largest contributor to mercury in the wastewater pretty much around the planet, but for sure in the United States. So it's more equipment that the dentist has to buy. And it never goes away once it's in the environment. So we have burial, cremation. This is really gross, but I think you can handle it.
I don't care.
Have you heard of sewage sludge that they use for farming? It's for
No, it
example,
makes sense. I mean, it's essentially fertilizer.
right? So the sewage sludge that they use for fertilizer also has mercury in it because it's human waste.
Hmm. That then gets into the water tables and the food supply.
Mhm. So we are, it's raining mercury.
Hmm.
And the largest source of most people is from your dental fillings, those common dental fillings. And it's a bad thing because it causes so many health problems. And now we have colleagues, the late Mark Geyer and David Geyer. They did statistical analysis since we now have the data of how many mercury fillings are in each citizen. And they've already found that it causes asthma, arthritis. I mean, they're linking it to all of these different diseases. And before they would say, well, we can't correlate it to any disease because it's so insidious. It could be anything. We know that mercury attacks the brain. It's the only heavy metal that passes the blood-brain barrier. And we know that there is a direct correlation between Alzheimer's disease and mercury. Absolutely. It's irrefutable. But the FDA has been covering this stuff up. I mean, I've testified in congressional hearings over the years, and it's just insane that we're still talking about mercury in 2025 when the European Union this year, in January of this year, banned it in 27 countries of all socioeconomic backgrounds. Some countries have more money, some have less, but they were able to do it. There's developing countries that have banned it. So it's the United States, Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. I call them the usual suspects. And they're slow walking this thing. I mean, if you figure out that 180 million people have this stuff in their head, and they think they're just getting old, people are just aging, and that's why they're developing these chronic diseases through the natural aging process. That's outside of all the external things that we have, like the bad food and everything else. It's a compilation of a lot of crap, but this stuff is by far the worst, and it's provable. And I tell people the dentist makes you sick, and then you're on the medical treadmill until you're in the box.
Hmm.
And yeah, there's so much research on it, it's not even funny. But the FDA, um, they're hiding all of this, and they're the regulatory body that everybody looks up to. The FDA. If the FDA says it's okay, then we believe it. I got news for you. I found something so explosive last week as a response to a citizen petition that they filed in 2022. And I just want to read this to you because you can give me your take on
Yeah,
it.
sure.
I almost fainted. And mind you, I've been looking at this stuff pretty much daily for decades. And this is what they said regarding dental mercury. Based on the reasons described above, FDA has concluded that it is not necessary to require that dentists provide this information to patients in order to provide reasonable assurance of the safety and effectiveness of this device. After consideration and based on all available scientific evidence, including evidence submitted in these petitions, FDA does not believe it is necessary or appropriate to require that dental health care providers provide this information to patients. Are you with me on this?
Yeah, I think.
In other words, hey, Mr. Dennis, don't tell the patient you're putting
Yeah.
the most toxic non-radioactive material, mercury. Everybody knows mercury's bad. You're going to shove grams of it in my head. I mean, this is egregious. This is so. I mean, I almost fell out of my chair when I saw it. I'm like, wait, they didn't say that. And I read it again. I'm like, they are recommending that dentists don't tell the patient. Now, how is that for informed consent? How could anybody in 2025 think that this is okay? Now, they wrote this in 2022, so it was a completely different administration, and I'm doing what I can to expose this because it's nuts. It's really nuts. I heard a story 2 weeks ago about a little kid going to the dentist and getting a mouthful of mercury. Now, the brains aren't even developed yet. And what do you do with the kid? You say, okay, now we have to take them all out. You take out the teeth. I mean, It's the removal process why they recommend not taking them out, because you can be exposed to massive amounts of vapor, and that can be really dangerous.
Yeah, that's it's kind of a shitty excuse. Like, hey,
Yeah, no kidding.
here, you're on, whatever, you're on Xanax for some traumatic event in your life, but we don't want to take you off of it because if you go cold turkey, you will die. And it's like, okay, let's not go cold turkey, but you got to have a path to get off this stuff. And I'm I'd say the blessing of COVID is as it started to dawn on everyone just how corrupt it all was, and
Oh
what
yeah,
and
no
and
kidding.
as someone who started the podcast in 2019, I kind of went through it all. And yeah, I have a biology degree. I got into medical school. I got into pharmacy school. This is all the stuff I loved, and I held it in the highest esteem. And as you slowly just start to see again and again and again, once is a random event, twice is coincidence, three times is enemy action. It's like, well, after you start seeing, then you get banned for this and banned for that, and they're covering this up, and they're removing that guy's Twitter account, and eventually it pulls the veil back from your eyes, and you go, wow, FDA, CDC, WHO, they're all in bed with one another. All the regulators are NIM or NIH, NIMH. They're all in bed with each other. And
Mhm.
then once you kind of accept that, which takes a while, you then go, I always use this example. When I was 17, me and my buddy Joe, his dad was out of town. We were drinking beer, walking around the apartment complex, and then we got arrested. I think someone saw us and called us. We weren't doing anything bad. My parents came and picked us up, and I was pretty drunk, and like my dad's driving me home, and I was trying to tell him that this was the first time I had ever drank, and he was just like, "Well, that's what a coincidence that I caught you the first time." I'm lying through my teeth. He knows I'm lying through his. The first time he got caught.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, once you start to accept that this happened, you go, is COVID the first time all this corruption happened? And we just, we're like, I don't know, we just happen to be, like us, like, I don't know, we're finding it out now. It's Scooby Doo. Like, we pull the mask off and we're like, you. Or has it happened nonstop, probably indefinitely, probably from the inception of these institutions? And it is just so egregious. And then also just, it's not 1850, it's 2020, and you have phones and the internet.
Yep.
What are you go? Oh, okay. We all accept it's corrupt and COVID was bad, and it just never happened before that. Or you go,
Yeah.
you've been bending over the public for decades, if not well over a century. So I think that's why I'm not shocked by any of this. Like I should be. It's not good to have like a tolerance to this stuff,
No,
but
it's
it's
not.
but it I don't know, but I guess that's also why I'm so open to like discussing it. Is like this isn't some fringe idea. It's like, yeah, we all just witnessed complete fraud.
Mhm.
That they locked the country down. Like, you know, middle schoolers are having heart attacks. Like we've
Horrific.
seen what they're willing to do. Yeah, this doesn't surprise me at all. I guess I'm still stuck on like purely from a profit standpoint. Let's just say I'm a complete psychopath. I'm a Gordon Gecko, pinstripes, and I don't care about. I'm not trying to kill anyone, but I'm not trying to kill anyone. I just want a yacht and a penthouse.
Right.
There's nothing cheaper than Mercury or is it the properties of its liquid at room temperature? Is that really
Well,
it?
imagine not well, nowadays, resins are just when you factor in all, for example, the cost of mercury versus composites. Composites are less expensive because now they're in higher demand. It's a supply and demand thing. But if you're going to sit and say, okay, I'm going to continue to poison people because that's all I know how to do. I never learned how to place composites. That's not good enough anymore. I mean,
Mm,
if a dentist is still using mercury, I call that criminal.
yeah.
It's a crime against humanity for sure, because we all know by 2025. I mean, for God's sake, we were the first country to ratify the Minamata Convention. We don't ratify environmental treaties, so we did. But we've done nothing on dental mercury. Nothing. Zero. Zero.
So sorry to interrupt. So is it a methodology? There's an entire, workforce of dentists. It'd be like we're doctors, and let's say it's like, yeah, I know that this whatever, phenol, I think the numbing agent, and it's kind of an antiseptic, but it also gives you liver issues. Is it a thing like, yeah, we get that it's bad, but what, you have 200,000 whatever practicing physicians, and they all know how to use. They're not trying to kill you, but it's like, is there is it categorically different to where it's not like you just, hey, remove this ingredient, stop using salt, and instead use pepper? is it something entirely different where it's like, no, this is the modus operandi? Like, what you can phase it out, but it's like this is what they know, like an entire generation that knows how to drive stick or something. Like I don't know how to, and it would be impossible to kind of teach me. Where it's not, that's not nefarious. It's like they all know how to do this, and whatever. As that
Talking
generation of
about,
stick drivers ages out, then we'll replace. What? Like, why is it still?
well,
What's the missing
that's
piece?
no, they say that, but come on,
I'm not
okay,
saying it's right. I'm just saying I can like kind
two
of
options,
see
right?
it. I
There's
get
composite
it.
resin, and then there's mercury. There's two. Resins have been around now for 40 years
Yes, then why are they
or
still?
more. So that's the lame excuse that they say.
Does someone own a mercury mine? Does some senator's wife own a mercury mine?
Well,
Like, what is it?
um, okay, just think of the numbers. Let's say we have, 350 million people, right? And half of them have mercury in their head. Do you see that? It's not asbestos, it's not a tobacco litigation. It is half of the population that has not been told based on the FDA's mandate, don't tell the patient. I mean, this is some serious stuff, you know. And in my world, and looking at this, they're recommending that it's not necessary or appropriate for a dentist to tell the patient we're using a known poison. Now, if you go to the manufacturer safety data sheets on these mercury fillings, they're like toxic, vapor, can kill. It's the labeling is the skull and crossbones. Okay. So that never trickles down. I lived in California and I started a movement out there with a pile of, very active people. And in the 90s, the early 90s, there was this thing called the Watson Law. Diane Watson um, had a biological dentist, which was really a rare thing back then. It was, really early in the game. And they said, okay, you have to tell the patient it's mercury and it's never been tested for safety and efficacy. Well, they buried it. So this is not anything new politically. It comes up in 2021 or 22. We had hearings in DC when it was Congressman Dan Burton, who was the chair of government reform, and Diane Watson, who was like the co-chair. And we had it on dental mercury, and they buried it again. Dan Burton was also the lead on mercury and vaccines. So he knew about mercury because he had a grandchild that was autistic. And, now everybody's talking about autism and the mercury in the vaccine. So our timing for dental mercury, which I thought would go well before vaccines, here we are, all these decades later, still fighting this stupidity of allowing people to get poison for profit. And, it's really, it's so unjust because the lucky people are the ones that actually find out why they're sick in the first place. But that's not the total of the population. It's a small amount of people. And then trying to get mercury out safely, the dentist literally needs to be in a spacesuit and the patient as well for a safe removal, which is why the FDA and the American Dental Association, by the way, which is a trade organization. Most people think, oh, the American Dental Association, they say this toothpaste is great. They are a trade organization like the Teamsters. And they got their hands in all kinds of stuff, and they're collecting money in all these different entities. And yeah, they're behind all of it. They drive the policy, they drive the education, and they want to die on the sword of mercury, but I'm here to say that if the FDA is telling the dentist don't tell the patient, meanwhile, not that long ago, dentists who would talk about mercury to their patient, the biological dentist, the holistic dentist, the dentists that were mercury free, they would lose their licenses. Okay. The corruption is just unbelievable. And frankly, with all my years now behind me of researching dentistry and not just mercury, but the whole field as a whole, it's toxic as hell. It's so toxic. Everything they do is toxic. The materials that they use are toxic. the treatments that they do, the root canals, the implants, and all this stuff, it's really, really bad. And synergistically, when you start adding all of these materials together, I'm surprised anybody's up walking around.
Yeah.
Frankly, it's that bad. It really, really is.
Hey there! Are you tired of skyrocketing subscription costs? With Q Broadcast, you get an entertainment package that is unmatched by other providers, with all your favorite content in one affordable bundle. Enjoy a 15-day trial for just $14.99. And if you refer 3 friends and they stick around, your subscription is free. Say goodbye to high-priced subscriptions, contracts, and hassles, and say hello to streaming simplicity with Q Broadcast. This changes everything.
Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food, 72 servings per pail, 25 years shelf life. I've had the owner Clayton on the show before. He's a God-fearing, America-loving patriot. Get one of these, get a couple of them, throw them in your basement. It's good to have it, not need it, than to need it and not have it. If you don't want to do that, you can get their seeds. You can plant your own garden, so you don't even have to keep buying them. You can just get the goods and start your own, or you can even get freeze-dried fruits and vegetables like bananas, apples, strawberries, and raspberries. They support the show. It's an honest product. It's a good safety measure to have, and they keep my show free for you. So I'd implore you guys to please go to heavensharvest.com, use the link in the description, promo code TPC. Axios Fitness Coaching is a premium resource for holistic strength and conditioning services. Axios is best known for the Training Club, capital T, capital C, an exclusive community that prioritizes accountability, technique, diet, and nutrition. Everything you need to do to take action against the decay of the modern world. Whether you're looking to improve your physique, build strength, or just take care of your health and fitness, Axios will provide you with a solution that is effective and simple to execute. All you need to do is complete the intake survey, and you can see if you're a good candidate for the training club or any other of the services. And it's going to sponsor the show. So, one company falls off, another one arises. So if you guys like the show, you want to work out, throw the show a couple shekels. Go take the survey. Thank you so much, guys.
Higher ultraviolet exposure is associated with lower mortality. The United Kingdom is a high latitude and low sunlight country. Researchers there collected data on over 360,000 participants in a study of UV exposure via solarium use. When compared with non-users, solarium users had 15% risk lowered of all-cause mortality, 23% lower risk of cardiovascular mortality, 14% lower risk of cancer mortality, and a 12% lower risk of non-cardiovascular, non-cancer mortality. In other words, all other causes. Quoting the researchers, our study adds to the growing evidence that the benefits of UV exposure outweigh the risks in low sunlight environments. A link to the original publication is available in the box below the video. Get some UV light this winter. Immerse yourself in the tranquility of the blue. Visit a Blue Room soon. www.blueroom.com.
So is the resistance from it? It would just be like a lawsuit that would like bankrupt everything. I mean, aren't
I've been saying that for 20
yeah,
years.
but aren't there are some cases though where it's like they don't recommend like pregnant women smoke anymore, or it's like I know these are low thresh or low bars of improvement, but I mean things like lead paint, like it does, even catalytic converters, like no one got like some lump sum if you were alive, if you were hurt by exhaust. It was kind of like a sucks to suck, but then you place something on this date going forward. How come that? I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that the people who are corrupt enough to do this would also find a way to make a bill that says, before this date, July 14th, 2025, if you had mercury fillings, that's on you. We didn't know and whatever. But from this day going forward, we're only going to be using this. Like, they're not doing. I guess that's why I don't. I
I
don't doubt anything you're saying. I don't doubt it at all. I'm confused by it.
Yeah, well, it's very confusing that they would, I mean, especially because we have a global treaty. I mean, this is like insane. It's insane. I mean, people are like, Oh, didn't they stop using mercury? I mean, I've seen papers, published papers saying the United States banned mercury. I'm like, no, they didn't. And they could be a great paper, a scientific paper with everything else correct. And I'm like, they didn't ban it here. They did not. And I don't know the answer. I'm hoping that this administration says enough, because Bobby Kennedy certainly is aware of mercury. He knows.
Yeah, he's talked about it,
Anybody
and
knows this guy is the guy that
yeah,
knows.
yeah. I listened to him when he was on Rogan like a year or two ago, and talking about mercury agents and vaccines to stimulate an immune response, and so I know he's aware of it. I guess. Yeah, I would imagine that someone just would have, like, regardless of the ethics, somebody just would have made a cheaper, like a cheaper version of it.
Well, yeah, resins aren't that expensive anymore because it's supply and demand.
That's why it doesn't add up to me. I'm like, well then,
Well, yeah, I don't know.
it's
They use it
it's
in all public dentistry, government funded dentistry. It's mercury first, and the military, they only get mercury. I was just talking to somebody the other day, and they're like, I just saw this little girl with a mouthful of mercury, and it's in California, and the father is in the military at Camp Pendleton. I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. It's so unbelievable. It's unbelievable. They're poisoning kids, and in their new 2020 updated version, the FDA, they say should not use, but it's not mandated. It's just a recommendation. So that's as good as nothing, you know?
I mean, excuse me, I'm chewing on nice. Like, so when they're rolling out vaccines and they're rolling out remdesivir, and none of it makes sense, and it's killing people, and it's not nearly as effective as ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine or vitamin D or zinc or turmeric, or blah 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 blah. And you go, well, why are they doing this? Why? And then eventually you go, oh, they're evil because one of them makes a lot of money and the other is generic. That's why. And once you figure that out, then it all makes sense. You go, oh, that's why they're doing it. Is I guess that's what I'm stuck on. Is like I don't doubt the evilness of man. It is do horrific.
It's everywhere. I mean, we're
the,
living
the,
it.
the history of mankind is
Yeah.
truly slaughtering others for your own gain. I get that. I'm not excusing it, but like that doesn't shock me. Where it's
Yeah.
like, how come this mobster had that mobster killed off? Because he wanted the territory. Okay, I
Right.
get it. It's not right, but I get it.
Right.
I don't get this.
Well, if you have all of these diseases that are caused by doctors are not looking at the mouth as part of the body.
Yeah.
Now that's for the dentist, but the dentist is the front line. Whole body health starts in your mouth. There's no doubt that that is not a fact. There's just no doubt. I mean, so many diseases that people have, you could relate it to the mouth. If you have root canals, the pathogens that are in root canals, you could look up the organisms, and you will find the relationship between certain organisms and cancer, for God's sake. I mean, I'm not making this stuff up. I just look at the literature and compile it and put it into a paper that's easy enough for anybody to be able to read it and look at the references. It's an outrage. But this has been going on. So my whole thing about the dentists make you sick, you're on the medical treadmill till you're in the box, that is the system. And it's actually a provable system. And, now it's implants. Oh, titanium implants, we're not going to use those because those, they disintegrate just like any other metal. We're going to use zirconia. Well, that's also bad. I mean, they keep trading one toxic thing for the next. They say, okay, root canals are bad. Not all dentists, but they switch the root canals to the titanium implants and now zirconia implants because they found out the titanium was bad. But people are still doing root canals. And it's, again, another trade organization. And, these guys are powerful. What can I tell you? They're making so much money. And oftentimes, these treatments are completely unnecessary, but they make a lot of money. In other words, you need a root canal. You need a mercury filling. You need, and you don't need any of it. But you're in the food chain of money for the dentist. And once you get in there, it's hard to get out. In my personal case, I had like one filling until I had dental insurance in my early 20s. And this guy put in 12 fillings at once. And in 6 months, I developed chronic adult asthma. Never made the relationship, never until many, many years later. But then, fast forward to 2024, whenever it was that the guys that I mentioned earlier come out with a paper based on the NHANES data saying it's linked to asthma. I'm like, I knew it all along after I found out about mercury, because I started to look at what does mercury do to the lungs? Well, you're breathing a mouthful of mercury, you're breathing it in. Some people have weak lungs to begin with. A lot of genetic predisposition will, facilitate in somebody that has mercury to have heart problems, for example, or something else, liver problems or kidney problems. They clearly say people that have kidney problems should not have mercury. How many people do you know? I mean, but the doctors don't ask, by the way, do you have mercury in your heads? If the doctor asked the question or looked inside the patient's mouth, this whole thing would flip upside down. But the dentist really is the front line of healthcare. But that whole business is corrupt. There's a handful of biological dentists versus all the ones that are conventional dentists, just making money on putting in toxic materials inside the person's head and charging a lot of money for it. And then, 6 months, a year, 2 years, it doesn't matter when, but down the line, the people start to develop health problems because of the treatments that they receive from the dentist and the materials that were used. And I'm telling you, it's there in the literature, but even finding it now in the literature, because PubMed used to be the go-to for a search engine for medical stuff, but I would say the last 3 or 4 years, they started pulling down, you cannot find a lot of the papers that you would normally have found on PubMed. They don't publish there anymore. So, and this is all government stuff. So it's bad. It's really bad. I call myself just the messenger, because if people have any disease at all under the sun, you start in the mouth. You say, okay, do you have root canals? Do you have extracted wisdom teeth? Even that is a problem, because what happens is if they don't take out the periodontal ligament, clean the socket really, really clean and let it bleed so that it'll regrow bone. There's a thing called a cavitation, and it's an infection in your mouth that's low grade. You don't know why you don't feel well. And, 20, 30 years later, you open up that socket and it's like the bone's disintegrated. There's nothing there. It's a disaster. So, they call those cavitations. And how many of those are out there? It's just nuts. So yeah, the dentist is not the good guy in this picture of health and wellness, except if you find a biological dentist that can unwind all the damage that was done over a course of a lifetime. And then again, it's not cheap. So people can't afford this stuff, and there's not enough dentists to be able to remove all the mercury that are sitting in people in the United States right now. There's just simply not enough. Every single dentist would have to work around the clock. They'd have to be trained to remove it safely. So, what's the solution? At least, for God's sake, stop putting it in. At the minimum, this problem is not going to go away the last time they put in a mercury filling. That problem is still going to exist decades later because of the people that have mercury in their mouth today. So yeah, it's bad.
What's a biologic dentist?
A biological dentist is one that looks at the whole body instead of just focusing on the teeth. A biological dentist will take the time to understand, the health of the patient. They'll use the safer materials. There's biocompatibility testing that's available. For example, when there's this guy, his name is Dr. Hal Huggins. He passed away. He's truly the father of biological dentistry. He was taught in the early 70s by this man from Brazil. His name is Dr. Olimpio Pinto, and he's still alive, believe it or not. He's in his 90s. And he told Hal Huggins, by the way, mercury is the reason why your patients are not getting better. And Hal said, okay, you're from Brazil. What do you know? And he said, take your sickest patients and take the mercury out and see if the health of the patient doesn't improve. And he did that, and he realized, oh my God, I've been poisoning my patients. It's always been about mercury as the first line of defense. So what Hal did is he took many, many steps forward. He went back to school and got a toxicology degree at the age of 50. And then he developed what was called a full dental revision, which means cleaning out the mouth and using restorations that are biocompatible to the patient. In other words, a restorative resin filling for me may not be good for you. In other words, he developed a test to analyze dental materials to see which is the least reactive, because you're always going to have a reaction because it's a foreign body. It's as simple as that. You want to get the least reactive for that individual person. So, there's other doctors that talked about dentistry as in the front. Weston Price, which is in the 1920s. This guy was so ahead of his time. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah.
Weston Price was a dentist, but he was also a nutritionist. And he did so much research on root canals, and he was the top dog of his day. And he got involved in studying this because he gave his son a root canal and his son died. So he wound up writing two incredible books on dentistry. And his work was so impeccable that you can still look at it today and say, okay, this guy was 1,000% correct. He said the mouth is the driver of health. And root canals are always infected, always. Even if they're asymptomatic, they're always infected. Fast forward to Hal's time. Hal said, okay, I'm going to start looking at root canals. Root canals are infected always. When they do the extraction and they send them in for biopsy, always. There's never been an oh God, I lost my train of thought.
The two books, root canals, always dangerous.
They're all toxic. All of them. They're all infected. A non-infected root canal. All of them are infected. So it's a big deal. It's a real big deal. So imagine all these people walking around with root canals, even if they're asymptomatic, and they think, oh my God, I just don't feel right. I don't feel right. And then you take that stuff out, and it's like, oh my God. Once you do a biopsy and you see what kind of pathogens are in there, it's nuts. And I'm not talking a little nuts. It's really nuts. So yeah, it's all about the teeth. Mercury just happens to be the top of this, and then you trickle down.
Is there any, to play devil's advocate, is there any weight in that's just what the downside, like some psychiatric medications, if somebody's really mentally ill or something, it's they got to take this medication, and the side effect might be dehydration or erectile dysfunction or hair loss or something. But if the illness is so bad, you might be like, what it causes vitiligo, but it's like, yeah, but this guy's been in a psych hospital for 20 years, like it's kind of the lesser of evils. Or like surgery, like I had my tonsils out, like it's yeah, I had them out in 2014. And it's like, yeah, this is kind of just where we are as a species. They go in there with a knife, you get some Vicodin, and don't, as soon as it doesn't hurt, stop taking the Vicodin. You don't want to get addicted. And it's like, shouldn't there be a better way? It's like, there should, but this is where we are. Even things like, like hormones and stuff in poultry. It's like, yeah, there are negative side effects, but it also allows, for even lower class people to go afford chicken breasts or go afford bananas. Are they genetically modified? Sure. But it's like, okay, we can not do all this stuff, and then a thing of bananas is going to cost you $50. A chicken breast will cost you $100. So in some ways, it's nobody's fault. It's just kind of like, this is where we are, like as a civilization. And I know that's a cop out, and that's not what I'm trying to take, but just to posit it as a devil's advocate, like mercury or zirconium, it's like, at the end of the day, this is just kind of like what it is. And it's like the downside, the other side is like, all right, don't do it. And then you have, messed up teeth, and, you're in unbelievable pain, and you're kind of back to like the Paleolithic era. It's like, yeah, your jaw hurts. Yeah, you're probably going to die. Is there any, like, this is just kind of where it's like, well, how come every person doesn't get insulin? And it's like, because someone has to produce it and it costs money, and it's just, it sucks, and it's bad that, you know, kids in Africa don't get enough water, but it's like there's no magic button where you press where everyone just gets food and water. And that's not a comforting answer, but sometimes it just is. It's
Well,
it's
it's a funny thing that you brought up, like the psychiatric side of this thing, because remember Alice in Wonderland, the Mad Hatter? That was basically because back in the day, the people that made hats would use mercury to form the hats, and they called it Mad as a Hatter because it was the vapor. These guys would go nuts. So mercury absolutely messes with the brain, and is it the root cause of everything? Maybe not everything, but so many things that you don't want to dismiss that as a causative factor in just
sure.
board. And the thing is, they knew since the get-go that it was bad, and they chose that anyway. Again, it's always about money, and you were right at the beginning. It's always about money, but how did we get there? So yeah, there's alternatives for sure. Um, is everybody going to be able to afford it? Well, this is where the government has to step in and say, okay, I liked your idea. Okay, as of today, we stop, but there has to be some sort of remediation for the patient that, or the person that has a mouthful of mercury. The dentists have to be trained in safe removal and using resin material to restore teeth. And those teeth that cannot be saved, the safest right now today is a removable appliance. That is absolutely by far the safest way for a person to go that had massive dental work done and they're sick, or they're feeling not like themselves. And it's very difficult because most people don't know what it is to feel good. And see, I'm one of those oddballs because I only had one feeling. I was a dance major in college. I had more energy. I mean, I was like flying until I got in my early 20s. I had these fillings put in 6 months. I couldn't walk.
Mm.
I mean, what's up with that? So when you know what it's like to be healthy, which is not the case for most people, you don't understand what
What
real
you're
health is
yeah,
because
what
you've
you're
never been
missing.
able to experience it.
Yeah,
And
no,
it does pass generation to generation. So your parents' mercury load and your grandparents' mercury load and every generation before that is passed down. So yeah, it's a really big deal. It's a really big deal.
I completely let this episode get away from us. I realized I have another show in 5 minutes. I thought we still had 20 minutes. I don't think we got into it. I apologize. We'll have to do another one. But um, I was gonna say, yeah, that's an important factor of like noticing real health. Even just like I stopped drinking like a year and a half ago, and even just sure, it's like the most obvious is yeah, you're not hungover the next day on a Friday. But even just little stuff, like as the months go on, you're like, oh, I'm kind of losing weight a little better. Oh, I don't really have as many bad nights of sleep. I don't, all these little things. And you go, oh, this is what it feels like. Sure, you got to go to work and all that, but it's like, oh, I kind of, for the most part, feel all right every day.
Right,
And you go, oh, this is what the baseline is. And then not only that, you go, so not only was drinking keeping you from doing that, but the side effects of drinking were making you want to drink so you could get away from the side effects. And I think
right,
that is a pertinent point is you don't know what you're missing. And that's probably a gigantic barrier to it. You don't know what you're not experiencing. Like
right.
it doesn't have to be this, it's to get the right size shoes and you're like, oh, it's you're not supposed to have blisters every day. I think
It's
that is
great.
a pertinent point is people might not be up in arms because they don't know what it is that they're missing. They've accepted this as reality, and it's not the
Right.
case.
And most people do. They think it's just aging,
It's just
that
yeah, it's just part
they,
of yeah, I'm getting older. It's
yeah, 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 yeah. And usually around the 50-year mark, that's when people really start to feel it, you know?
oof,
And
it's dark.
it doesn't have to be that way. You could regain your health. I mean, you already, in your experience, just by not drinking, you
Oh
saw
God,
a change in yourself.
yeah,
I mean, when you take out mercury properly out of somebody's head, I mean, I've heard testimonials over the years that people like, my brain fog is gone. I can
Yeah.
think, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I never thought I'd do it again. It's a legitimate thing. And the most important gift that we all are graced with is our health.
Hmm.
And it doesn't matter who you are, but when the guy in the white coat takes that away from you, and you don't know it, I mean that to me it's criminal. I'm sorry. There's no other way for me to explain how putting mercury in somebody's head in 2025 is legit. And
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
don't know how to do a resin filling, retire.
Yeah.
Fall out.
And yeah, that's kind of the ethical burden is like you might not
Yeah.
have known of something and that's okay, but once you find out about something, it's like then you have to now it's on you. God put it on your
Well, yeah,
plate,
exactly.
and now you
It's
have to. So
exactly. And if you're in a healthcare profession, it's already on you. How could you not know this?
yeah,
I give no, I go be a plumber. I give no passes.
yeah,
When I started out in this movement, I gave passes. No, 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 no. We have a treaty for God's sake that most people don't even know about.
I didn't know about
But,
it.
yeah, no, no passes. Get out and leave the people be.
Um, we have to wrap it up right now. I let that I let that get away from me. I kept asking questions. I didn't really I glanced at the time. I was like, oh shit. If you could send me all the links in the email and I'll put them in the
Oh my
description.
God, I'd be
And
happy to.
and I have another show after this, but I'll ping you after that, and we'll schedule another one, and I'll make sure to just shut my mouth and let you actually, because we didn't really get into like what is there to do about it. I was asking that. So, but I would imagine most people listening probably had the same questions as me, so maybe it wasn't all for naught. But yeah, I will email this if you could send me the links, and I
I
will.
will send you a whole pile of stuff. Blow
Yeah,
your mind.
and I will even after the shows today, I will email you back and we'll schedule another one and I will make sure to give you the full time and I'll stop talking. I
Oh
apologize. I
no,
let that
no,
get away from
it's a
me.
pleasure, Tommy. I so appreciate it because this is, I call myself the information superhighway on dentistry. People need to know. They need
Absolutely.
to know because they're spinning their wheels looking for answers, and it's
You're looking under what's the drunk man looking for his keys under the street light? And so
yeah.
you got to look everywhere else on the road. He's like, but there's no light, and it's like, yeah, but if the keys aren't under the street light, you're not. What are you doing? Yeah, well, it's the only place I can see. It's well, you're on a fool's errand. Um, but yeah, no, I would love to do that, and we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much for your time. Send me those links. I will get back to you this evening. We'll schedule another show. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It was great. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you
Bye.
so much.